Good morning. We're going to have a bit of a conversation this morning around the practical application of AI, artificial intelligence, to solve real world business problems. So this is a real media buzz topic at the moment. Yeah, everyone's following the stock price of Nvidia because obviously they're powering a lot of the AI stuff. And one of the questions that we quite often get asked is it just ChatGPT? Is it just generating new marketing content? And the honest answer is no. That's the real consumer focus of a lot of the AI tools. The real power of the AI tool set that is available now is actually analysing real world data sets to come up with answers that are for real business problems. So it might be things as simple as having a customer conversation, being able to analyse that conversation and turn into a set of specifications as quickly as possible, that then can be matched against a set of business specifications, product specifications, to actually solve a problem and shorten what's known as the quote to cash cycle or the inquiry to cash cycle in businesses. And that's something that we've seen work quite well for a number of organisations that we deal with. And that's a meaningful outcome from AI.
So if someone's out there and they're like, I would love to use AI somewhere in my business, but I've got no idea where to start, what do you recommend doing first?
Look, great question. And this is one that we've had a lot of people sort of say to us, I understand all the hype and I can see that it's got value, but I just don't think it's for my business. And particularly for non-white collar based businesses, that is often the struggle. It's like, I can understand what it does, but how does this help me when I paint houses? And that's a fantastic starting point. Where do I start? And really, AI's power is in its ability to analyse large amounts of data to come up with the probability that an outcome is consistent across multiple sites or multiple scenarios. So let's take the example of, say, an organisation that is a commercial painting organisation that does houses. If you've got significant amounts of data on work that you've done in the past, and that is from the initial client inquiry right through to the proposal, right through to the finished job, and you've got all that data available, then that is an absolutely perfect candidate to be run through an AI engine to come up with things like, what is our average time to paint the house? What's the average amount of paint that we go through? What are the outliers? What are the things that we need to look for? How can we ask questions of our clients, prospective clients, better? How can we turn that around to, I've got a house that is considerably different, but from the client's perspective it might be, from the experience perspective it might not be. AI can actually help to summarise that information and provide answers to those sorts of questions a lot faster than trawling through that data manually can be.
And so how does Microsoft fit into all of this? How do you provide the service to actually assist businesses with integrating?
Great question. Our background in infrastructure management and technology services ideally positions us to understand how the data needs to be set up and structured, what the privacy and security settings needs to be, which tools are actually the most appropriate, whether that be a ChatGPT or a Copilot or a Perplexity or Anthropic or Claude or one of the 10 million different tools. It ideally sets us up to be able to analyse the requirements, look at the actual business processes that are being used by the company that's wanting to explore this, and then come up with a strategy of how that can actually be implemented. Because not all of it's about technology, some of it's actually about the staff, how they're going to respond to that, what they need to know, how it actually impacts on their day-to-day, and what are the other tool set challenges that you may actually face, policy stuff, process stuff. How does that actually work? What does that look like for your business, and how do you actually leverage the rapidly changing technology to get the best outcome? And ultimately that best outcome is to be able to service your clients in a more appropriate manner, a more effective manner, or to increase your profitability. So we are ideally placed from an infrastructure perspective to help with that and to measure the outcomes that you will actually achieve.
So in terms of the ability to integrate and everything with what you just said, with staffing and communicating and potentially building upon what you already have,
Yep.
Is that something that is not just achievable with, yes, you can integrate, but is it something that is financially viable for certain businesses, and is it something that's going to take a long time, or other things that potentially may not be on the forefront of the mind of the company, if we need to do this and that's just too hard for right now.
Look, as with most things in technology, the devil's in the detail. The process we tend to use to evaluate whether something is workable is number one, undertake what we call a gap assessment or a readiness assessment, and that's really to gather an understanding of what's already in place in terms of the data that's captured, where it's located and how it's structured. Then looking at how well matured and defined the existing business process actually is, because if there's no process, applying AI really doesn't help that much. It's about taking that process, analysing it, and then seeing where AI fits into that. And sometimes it may not. There may be other technologies that are more appropriate. Coming up with a roadmap and then looking at taking bite-sized chunks out of that and going, okay, if we apply some technology to this, what's the impact, and does that actually move the needle? And then iteratively going through that process to work out what the outcome will actually look like in the end, and all the way along it's obviously predicated on the business owner or the business champion being involved in that process and going, yeah, that's exactly what we want, or no, that's not, we need to move closer to this, or look at other ways of going about that to get to the outcome that's actually desired. And what we've found is that those outcomes often change midway through the process, and where you end up in the end is not actually where you thought you were going to be when you started the process. And that's okay, because ultimately it's about the business owner and the client getting the outcome that they want.
And what are some potential pitfalls or dangers or risks that companies should be looking out for with AI?
Yeah, look, there's many. The biggest one that we see is the misnomer that AI is actually intelligent and that it will solve all problems for all people, and that's simply not the case. Artificial intelligence, or large language models as they're more appropriately known, are really a probability engine, and they inference through probability. So if something's got a high likelihood of probability, then they'll call that the correct answer. It may not be the correct answer; it just may be the most obvious answer. And taking that as a given in business can often lead you down the wrong path and give you an outcome that's not ideal. So it's being able to maybe train or put guardrails around those sorts of outcomes. That's one of the hardest ones. The other big one is obviously, the models that you use often are open, what they call open models, which means that any data that you upload to them is then used to train that model going forward. Now, in some commercial situations, that's just simply not appropriate. Your data needs to stay as your data. It needs to be private, it needs to be secured, and it needs to be locked away. Making sure that the right model with the right implementation is in place, that can be quite challenging for the uninitiated as well. So there's a whole heap of thinking around that needs to be carefully gone through, analysed, assessed, and then decided upon before you actually go live. Many cases of people well-intentioned but taking private data, uploading into ChatGPT, and then finding out that data is then available for everybody else. And once it's there, you can't get rid of it. So it's really important that that's assessed and analysed before you actually go ahead and do things.
And is that something that Microsoft is able to help people with?
Yeah, absolutely. That's something that we've spent a great deal of time in our implementation processes and design processes in ensuring that we understand what the data is that's actually being used and analysed, what level of privacy is appropriate for that data, whether that data should actually be used for training, because some data certainly should, and then applying that appropriately, backing it up with policy and backing it up with governance structures internally within the business that can then support and educate around that as well.
And are there particular services that you have found to be more favourable for you in your work?
Yeah, look, there's, I guess we were early adopters, as most technology providers were, or technology companies were, in getting our feet wet and seeing what this technology can actually do. And some of the earliest successes for us has been analysis of meeting content for sentiment, for action planning, and just reducing the time that essentially was administrative dead time in some of our processes. You know, even down to things like analysing voicemail messages that you know, you randomly get from various places. You know, being able to save time on, you know, people not having to actually listen to the message, you know, download, listen to the message, and then decide what to do. That the text transcript of that is available. And while that's not necessarily an artificial intelligence or an AI application, it certainly comes out of that whole machine learning space that you're analysing, you know, recorded voice and turning it into a transcript, which is, you know, certainly fits into that business automation and process automation space, and offers massive savings for organisations where, you know, you might not have 24/7 capabilities, but you know, after hours messages are left, you need to be able to action those, you need to be able to determine priority, and you need to do that without necessarily increasing headcount. And that's the sort of stuff that there are tools out there that do that really, really well.
Excellent. And so if people want to learn more, they want to, you know, do the AI readiness assessment or, you know, any of the above and go, help me, where would you direct them to?
Hit me up on LinkedIn, go to our website. There's a couple of blogs that we've recently posted on exactly this, you know, AI as a tool rather than as the saviour of business. And you know, we've got some policy documents available for download and review that cover off on things such as you know, internal policy for AI adoption, as well as how you can go about having those conversations with your staff on what AI is and is not in terms of what their jobs look like going forward.
Beautiful. Well, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.